right. All right, we're live here. Dr. Calvin from the Cone Health Institute. You guys, he's one of the hottest young docs out right now on the circuit. Dr. Cone does some incredible recruiting and has pulled in like this rock star. So I have gotten treated by him multiple times. He's absolutely fantastic and wanted to have him on with us and start chatting more about awareness and health and the foundations of it. And I think right now, more than anything, people want to understand immune systems and what a virus is. Obviously, this is a leading comment, but how not to be afraid of an actual virus because it's something we produce. And then on top of that, the other ones were built on them, and they're 10 to the 31, as Zach Bush said, like all around us. So it's nothing we can hide from. So when we want to hear straight from a doctor, I want you guys to listen what one of the hottest doctors says about health and awareness. So obviously we're going to tie in, part one in my book is awareness, and we talk about nutrition and intake and exercise and hydration and sleep and getting the stressors, out of your body from EMFs with our grounding bags. The list goes on and on. We're going to only give you about 30 minutes, so it'll be a compact, compact talk on health. But let's go ahead and first start with you. When you think of the word awareness in regards to health, where does that take your mind?
Thanks, Justin. Well, awareness really, to me, is knowing your body, knowing your health, and knowing where you are compared to where you can be, right? And where you shouldn't be. So we were just talking off camera first when we were talking about how some people can live throughout their whole life and maybe they don't experience, big symptoms. And they just have the normal small aches and pains, or just a normal headaches, right? Just a little bit of gut issues. But these tiny things, or so we call tiny, are actually an accumulation of the damage done on the body over time. And that's the awareness that we're talking about. And I like to tie this in on an analogy, the thermostat, right? So you set the thermostat at about 70 degrees. Right. And that thermostat is going to hold it there at 70 degrees. Well, what if 70 degrees means that it's actually a disease state, right? And you actually got to bring it down to about 50 degrees. So if your set point is at 70 degrees, you will never know. You're not going to be aware of actually what is possible with your health, is actually going to the next level, which is what Justin's book is about. Athleticism is about, it's not just for athletes, but it's for everybody to learn and to read and to take with them on their everyday life, because it has all the tools in there that we possibly need for our health, right? It covers majority, 95% of things. And then the 5% of things, that's the stuff that, we treat really well. It's either the anomaly or the chronic illness that's not being resolved. But being aware is just, one of the questions we can just ask ourselves right off the bat is, okay, how is my health? Where am I at? And don't think about what is wrong, but rather ask yourself, what can I improve, right? What can be better? And then you look at the way, you can first start off with the way you eat, the way you digest food, because that's number one. If you're not getting in nutrients, right, we don't have the building blocks to build our health. So, okay, how am I eating, right? And everybody knows how to eat healthy, right? For the most part, some people don't, but we can talk a little bit about that. But majority of the time, people know what they should be doing, but people just don't have this, I guess, awareness that the little things that they're doing to themselves can actually be harmful, such as, not eating organic foods that's laced with glyphosate and pesticides and herbicides, insecticides, chemicals and heavy metals in them. Right. So these are the nuances that people don't seem to understand as much. This is our job as doctors and health professionals to educate you on those things. And the awareness factor is really not only just asking questions, but it's about learning too. Are you growing as an individual? I like to ask myself, am I 1% better today from yesterday? And some days it's a no, and that's perfectly fine. But if I look at the overall trend of, where we're headed, it's like it should be in a positive direction. So, the saying is that, if you do the same things over and over, expecting the same result or expecting a different result, the same things, then that's the definition of insanity. And unfortunately, most people don't seem to come outside of that box of what they think is normal. And, but they expect a different result. They expect, their health to be better, right? Until it doesn't. And then we start blaming like our age. We start blaming, something that happens, right, to the world, for instance, right now, which is what we want to touch on. Obviously, we're in a time where a lot of people are afraid, and it's a big issue, right? And just to segue into that is, my belief of how people should treat the current environment is, well, ask yourself, like, how am I going to strengthen myself so that I am essentially, bulletproof from whatever is out there? Because it's there. It's already there. Unfortunately, we live in this like toxic world, right? We have things that get, sprayed on our food, in our water. There's plastic everywhere. There's EMF radiation, which, you're an expert in, and there's pollution everywhere. And so it's hard as an individual, it's not as easy to just go out there and, start yelling at everybody and saying, you shouldn't do this or stop polluting the world. We can that's why we, vote, and that's why we're an advocate. But what we can do for ourselves is ask the question, how can we strengthen up our own bodies? And I always think of this like, if I was if I was like an armored vehicle, going through war, and then there's bullets like flying in. Those bullets are essentially like, bacteria and viruses and, radiation and all these things that are harmful to us potentially. And, the armored vehicle is my body, so how can I make it even more bulletproof to everything out there? Right. And that's essentially what, all the stuff that, you've studied, that's talked about in the book that Justin has wrote, and all the products that you provide in eliminating EMFs. So, that's really the awareness is, asking yourself questions, and then also, educating yourself, and what better form of education than reading a book. Right?
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I want to break it down a little more for you. Dr. Calvin's he walks the walk. Like, he's not only an expert as a doctor, but fitness wise, he's exceptional. So we'll go to the park. We'll be doing 100 pull-ups plus, in one workout together like that. I mean, we're at a high level, elite level. We've trained a long time to get to this level. So not everyone's there. You got to build up to that. So we're coming at a different angle. But the one thing is I just want you to know that he's just not talking about health as some esoteric thing. Like, he lives it and walks it and treats people every day with it. It's a huge, huge part of it. And in this current environment, everyone's Purelling their hands like that. We have live cultured bacteria on our system, in our system, like all around us. We can't get away from it. You can't hide from it. Mask doesn't hide from a virus or anything. When we go to the store, we get probiotics, right? When your gut's immune system is compromised. What are those?
Those are essentially good bacteria and
good
microorganisms.
Live cultured bacteria?
Right.
But we're eating them? But yeah, we're trying to kill bacteria on our hands? Like, wait a second here. When a banana turns brown after not eating it for, 10 minutes, like, that's bacteria. Like, we're built on this stuff. So if you can dive into the challenge with our body when we go into fear mode, and how it puts us in a sympathetic nervous system state.
Yeah. 100%. So, the challenge of the current modern day living is that we're bombarded with stress. And this stress comes in about three forms that I like to deal with: something physical or structural, something biochemical or nutritional or toxicity, and then emotional and mental stress. And obviously, most people think of stress as a mental emotional thing. Like I have anxiety, or I have bills to pay, I have deadlines to meet, and I have all these things I need to do. And I always feel, I'm always worrying about something. So that's a form of stress. And if you notice in that state, let's say if you were, running late to something and you're really anxious, you're going to feel your heart rate, racing. You're not going to be digesting your food properly. You're probably not, your head's not in the right place, and your body's not geared for healing. If you think about healing, it's in the parasympathetic state, which is the opposite of the sympathetic or fight or flight. And it is this rest and digest state that our body heals and recovers. And that's really important. The unfortunate part of today's society is that we're always running around. We're looking for the next stimulus, and we're always caught with some sort of stress to chase after, to fix, and that causes a lot of damage on the body. I think the statistics is something like 85% of disease, chronic disease for people in the world are all related. They all come down. The root of it comes down to stress. Wow. So that's a huge, huge thing. And one of the things that I found that's most helpful for me and also for my clients and patients is neuro-emotional technique. People call it about like 6 months of therapy in a minute, but it's not therapy. It's just allowing us to have better awareness of what our triggers are for stress, and to eliminate some of that charge, that meaning behind it, so that we're able to walk through life a lot more relaxed. So if you haven't experienced neuro-emotional technique, it is life-changing for sure. And then the other form of stress that's huge, critical, is biochemical. Bio meaning living, chemical meaning your own body's chemistry, right? Like making hormones, making neurotransmitters, making energy so that you can actually like live, right? And so how does that work? And people think, oh, it's just your diet. It's not so simple. And we talk about microbes, and microbes are a big topic, especially now in our ever toxic world. People get exposed to parasites, bacterial infections, viral infections, right? And all sorts of things. And then on top of that, people can also be deficient. I was just reading the beginning of your book, and then Justin, as if he doesn't look like it now because he's taking care of himself, but he grew up on KFC, right? And mac and cheese, right? And so, for some, if you do that for a long time, there's going to be your body's essentially is deficient in so many crucial vitamins and minerals. And that has a huge effect on our health for sure. So that's how we check, when we're doing it in the clinic, we're checking specifically, we're utilizing kinesiology, we're utilizing functional muscle testing, biofeedback to assess what the body is doing and what's deficient and what's toxic. And so the saying is that if we're not testing for it, then we're just guessing. So, you may not know that you're toxic. The reason you may be sick or feeling symptoms is probably because your body is not strong enough. And the reason why your body is not strong enough is because you haven't dealt with the underlying, microbes that are bad, which is the toxicity side, or the underlying deficiency, things that you should be eating more of that you're not, and sometimes people have no awareness on that until they come see, a functional doctor like myself. So that's on the biochemical side. There's so much there. And then one of the things, the last thing is physical and structural. And, Justin, you talked about working out. This guy is a surfer, crazy athletic, It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal, really. And taking care of yourself, you don't have to be an elite athlete. You don't have to do crazy like jumping stuff and super athletic stuff, CrossFit, go hardcore. You don't have to do any of those things. You can just start by doing simple things for your health, right? Walking is probably the simplest thing. And in your book, you talk about the concept of cross crawl. Cross crawl is basically when we walk, right? We put our left hand forward and we put our right leg forward and our right hand or right arm back. And that's called cross crawl. It's an opposite motion. And that's really stimulating to the brain, really enhances brain health. I highly suggest it for anyone who's aging is to go back to the basics. If you think about it, crawling is the first thing a baby does and it develops their brain. Why wouldn't we keep doing that as we start to age, right? And it lays it out perfectly in the book and talking about cross crawl, which is, what you can do is just go for a walk, go for a swim, right? Bike riding, all these things. Very, very simple things that people can do to enhance their structural health. And that's really important. And obviously, there's things that you're not aware of, once again, is physical injuries that has happened in the past. And that's what I like to deal with the most is the neurologic side, is that if you've had injuries in the past, that can also affect your health. How does that happen? Well, in Chinese medicine, every muscle, right, or every organ relates to a different muscle group in kinesiology. So there was a brilliant man, Dr. George Goodhart, who created applied kinesiology, and he basically looked at the acupuncture meridian system from Chinese medicine and saw all the different elements and saw all the different organ systems in the body. And he correlated it with all the muscle testing that he found from, the knowledge from the physical therapy world. And then he was able to, combine the two and was like, wow, if people had, for instance, like a hip muscle that was off causing them hip pain or back pain, that can potentially be a large intestinal issue or a kidney dysfunction, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you have an immediate danger, but it means that that organ may not be working at 100%. And why is it not working is a very good question. And that's what we ask. And it could not be working because you have toxicity, you could be having deficiency, you can be having emotional issues, right? Or you could have had a previous injury, maybe to the hip, that caused a neurological pattern dysfunction that reflexively caused a organ dysfunction, and that's called a somatic visceral reflex or response. And that can happen too, because the same nerves that go to your hip can go to those same organs. And that's really the basis of chiropractic, right? Is to affect that. But what we do with like quantum neurology, applied kinesiology, and all the different techniques is that we take it to like one step further, right? To really hone in on specifically what the root cause is. So all those things I know there's a lot there and there's a lot to unpack, but that's kind of like the outline of what I think and how I see, health is how do you improve these little individual places? Just like your armored vehicle running through battle, right? You got to make sure your windows are bulletproof. You got to make sure your doors are nice and thick. You got to make sure your wheels are huge and bulletproof as well. And your engine is going to be working and it's well oiled. And so there's so many components to your vehicle that you should be aware of, right? And and things that we can, how to be aware of them. For instance, I don't really know much about, fixing cars. So I have a poor awareness there, but I can go to a mechanic and they can tell me all about it, probably because they picked up a book or had experiences and they learned. So one of the ways that we learn about our own vehicle of life, which is our own bodies, is to read and learn from, experts like yourself, people, like you said, people who, walk the walk. And not just throw information out there. And that's what I really want to provide is like just information and my insight, because I do a lot of testing on myself. I know Justin does as well. And, it's important, right? Like who do you listen to, right? So I would say that, definitely pick up this book and read
Thank
it
you.
and use it. It's incredible, and it's so simple. Simple things you can do everyday life to enhance your health.
Thanks. Well, let's dive in a little bit more on eliminating the stressors and toxicity. And I know we get them, a lot of different ways, from food to air to, EMF to fillings in our mouth. Like, was it one of the docs on our summit said the only legal place to put mercury is in your mouth and in a vaccine directly in your blood. But other than that, it's toxic waste. So you have to have it properly eliminated, which is unbelievable. So let's dive into some of the neurostressors real quickly for the body, like a vaccine, and how important is it for our own bodies to build our bioterrain up in these ways and really just flat out know. You have to know it, not believe it, but know it, that we're our own best healer, and a drug or a vaccine isn't.
Yeah. So I think this is worth educating people on, is really the concept of the vaccine. And if we think about the original concept of the vaccine, it's actually pretty brilliant. And in fact, it's actually adopting what's happening in the body, and it's just calling it something else. Because what happens in the body is that you get exposed to something and you build immunity to it, right?
You get a little introduced to it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So for instance, like if you were to get, back in the day, if you were to get sick, right, and then you build immunity to that, which is you get over that illness, you essentially now are like immune, because your body has a memory of how to actually attack, the specific microbe, right? So with that same concept, that's how vaccines were created, because people wanted to know, okay, well, how do I take something that is potentially can be really, really harmful and pack it in a vaccine and introduce it to the human being on the body, and so that it can have a very small reaction or maybe no reaction, and let your immune system recognize what the substance is. And then now it knows how to handle it once it recognizes. So it's essentially introducing the substance and letting the body do its thing, right? That's all it is. But, the challenge with vaccines nowadays is not like how it was before. And, I'm not like anti-vaccine or anything. I am just, looking at the facts and the science, and I'm looking at, what makes sense to me. And the problem with it is that we know that there are a lot of neurotoxins that are used in the vaccine that is used to, like, adjuvants in there, right? That can be aluminum, that could be mercury. And these things cause a lot of toxicity in the body. The heavy metals specifically really like to go after your neurological tissues. So people have probably heard that, oh, maybe we shouldn't be using so much aluminum foil or using so much aluminum cookware, because that has a correlation with like Alzheimer's and dementia, right? So people started finding these things out. And then, things with mercury, it's the same way. People have neurological issues. I have a mentor who got way back in the day, he got his mercury amalgams removed, but there was no such thing as a biological or holistic dentist where they have vacuums and everything. So they just got it removed and it leached in his, sublingually. So it got reabsorbed back into his tissue. And then I think within just hours, he was starting to lose function in his hands. And then to this day, he was crippled for a long time. He was in the hospital very sick. And it was kind of a miracle how he, recovered. And now to this day, he still has permanent dysfunction, in his hands. So it's a very big issue. And so the question is really like, how come we are essentially putting so much toxins in the body when we don't necessarily need to, right? So I think of it as a risk reward. If the risk of introducing these things is causing a lot of neurological issues, causing further harm in the body, right? And that could be potentially more dangerous than what the actual substance or what the actual, microbe is. And I think that's really the debate on that. And for kids nowadays, it's mandatory that, they get vaccinated like a lot. There's a lot of things on the schedule. And it used to not be that way. When the vaccines first got introduced, it was like, one or two, here and there, you space them out, and you let the body do its thing. You let the body heal from that, because it is a form of stress. You got to understand the mechanism, right? When you get think of when you get sick, for instance, when you were in college or when you were in school, during finals time, everybody is stressed out, not eating properly, not sleeping properly. And what happens to people? People get sick because everybody's just breathing their own air and just, and then what happens is that you eventually get over that. But what your body is doing is it's going through like sort of like a detox phase, right? And, your body is essentially learning how to deal with this thing, and, on the fly. And then you kind of get over it. But what if you had to, not only go through finals, you're dealing with the flu, right? Your dog passed away. You got a family issue. You're in debt, and then you get into a car accident. And then you're on top of that eating terrible food. Your boyfriend, girlfriend breaks up with you. And then you like sprain an ankle. And then you dislocate a shoulder, it's too much. It's too much for the body. It almost feels like, oh my God, like I just, so that's what's essentially happening when we have a small infant and we're giving so many toxins to them all at once, right? Again, risk, reward. Is the reward worth it for the amount of risk? And in a lot of cases, in most cases, I think no. I think we've taken this thing a little bit too far. And, we're not going to get political, but if you just look at, the current environment of, who's liable potentially for harm. And there's a law that basically says no one has to be liable. And that's a problem. That's a current problem. So I think these are the issues to be aware of, right? So when it comes to vaccines, it's looking at, how safe is it, and we know that in history, with this current vaccine that's going to come out, it's coming out in record speed. And that's all very alarming because it hasn't gone through all the testing, right? Pharmaceutical drug, when it comes out, it's gone through a whole bunch of testing, but a vaccine doesn't have to go through because it's not considered a drug. It's a separate category. So it doesn't have to go through the same amount of testing. That's alarming to me. That's really alarming. For instance, the new car that comes out, the new electric vehicle that comes out, right? The next one that comes out. And let's just say me and Justin were the creative vehicle and we're like, we want to launch it by 2021, right? Me and you, health experts turned into like car making gurus. And we just wanted to create like a car that was super fast, comfortable, and we put it together by, let's say, by next year. I don't know. Would you drive it? We haven't gone through testing. It's a brand new thing. It's
not electric if I'm making it.
Right.
Just for the record.
And we haven't gone through. In fact, because there's a need for it in the world, because we believe that people need this car, we're actually going to skip all the safety testing. How does that make any sense at all?
That doesn't.
It doesn't, right?
Well, I think the big part too is what you're getting at too is how full is each individual's bucket. Every individual person has a different level of fullness for their bucket of stuff. So if parents pass down heavy metal toxicity and then that shot's like the one that broke the camel's back, like their bucket was full where others might not be as full. So it might take many, many more. So you just don't know because they're not doing methylation tests. They don't do heavy metal tests. Like, they don't treat everyone the same. And that's the biggest thing, is you have to treat everyone individually on this stuff. And when you start to look at your body, and understanding that what health really is, then we could start to go to next level and take a new dimension to your game. One of the things I wanted to share, which I don't know if you had heard, and we're filming this just shortly after Eddie Van Halen passed away. And Eddie Van Halen was one of the greatest rock stars of all time. Obviously a fan of mine for sure in my era. And he is documented by saying that he died not because of all his partying and smoking. His lungs were clear. He was in an electrical studio with electricity everywhere, and he had a metal pick on his tongue. He got cancer on that same spot as that metal pick. That's unbelievable. So metal is obviously a conductor, but essentially that's what we're doing now, right, Dr. Calvin? We're wearing earbuds or wearable technology, and we're just beaconing. We're having a localized conductors in our ear or on our wrist or in our pocket with a cell phone. And I mean, quite honestly, for me, I think the outlook's really can be challenging for a lot of people who are buying into it, especially the younger ones that don't have as much defense mechanisms. Their skull is not fully developed and all. And that's why we developed the grounding bags. But if you can dive in real quick on some of the EMS stressors and what your response is to that from Eddie.
Yeah, so I think most people, a lot of people, I think most people don't actually, is it actually, EMFs are, these radio waves that we don't see. And we have to be aware of these things, right? Some people think that, just because I don't see them, they're not that harmful. And it's like, how is it that your phone can be, you can pick up a phone and just, contact someone across the world. Obviously these technologies are very, very powerful. And for most of us, we don't have a great understanding of this, of how it affects the body. Except now, there's been a lot of studies showing how it affects red blood cells. And it can harm them, right? And that's at a cellular level. And then people may think, well, that's just at a cellular level. I don't know what that means. Well, think of this. You, my friend, are a big glob of cells. So if it's affecting you at a cellular level, it's affecting you at an entire level. So it's really disruptive. It's disruptive on people's sleep, right? Disruptive on people's ability to handle stress. Disruptive on people's ability to think cognitively, right? And it's disruptive on our organ function, on our electrical function. We are electrical beings, energetic beings, meaning, and it's not just some, foo-foo term. It really is. If you look at what a cell is, there's actually electrical charge. You can measure this.
Energy.
It's energy. It's just, it's science. So, I think a lot of people have this, they don't understand that part. So that's a really important concept, because your phone is also energy. It's also electrical. You are electrical. So if your phone's being affected by it, you are also being affected by it. But what we've seen is that these things make a phone work nicely, but it doesn't make a human body work great. In fact, too much of it actually starts to inhibit a lot of different functions. Like I said, with sleep, people have a poor ability to sleep. One of the things you can do, this is what I do. I have this everywhere with me. I have one in the car. There's mini ones that I put in the car. I have one in the backpack because you don't know where you're walking into nowadays. But I put one literally it's about this far away from my head in my bed, and I sleep with it, in the bed. And this protects, a great surface of area. It almost protects my whole house. Just having, I live in a smaller apartment, but it protects me from all the Wi-Fi's in my apartment, in the other people's apartments. And what I've noticed is that, you actually sleep a lot better. You go into deeper sleep, which is great. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed so that you can harmonize your body against these harmful, waves. And on top of that, even though it says it's for sleep, it does so much more. It harmonizes your entire body. It upregulates you. There's grounding, or earthing is a concept where when you put your feet on the earth, like grass and sand, ocean water, you get exposed to the negative ions. You're dumping your positive ions into the earth, and it's a balance, right? You go through life and you're just feeling so charged, and then you ground yourself, and it balances everything out. Well, imagine just having that effect, but carrying it with you all the time, or sleeping, and it's phenomenal, helpful, super helpful for people. So it allows people to think clearer throughout the day, allows people to sleep better. When you sleep better, obviously you're going to recover better. Think of the times that you don't get good sleep. And I think the statistics is 80% of people actually don't have good sleep. Again, it comes down to awareness. You may be asking yourself, am I sleeping properly? If you're waking up throughout the night, you probably don't have great sleep, right? Or sleep where it's supposed to be at. We're supposed to be able to sleep, 6 to 9 hours throughout the night without waking up, right? You get into different phases of sleep, right? And the deeper you go, the more regenerative that is. Your brain accesses different brain waves. That's healing for the brain. There's toxins and microbes and metabolic waste that you go throughout the day. Just like a car. I keep coming back to this, but just like a car, you got fuel that comes out, and then you got exhaust that comes out, right? You don't want to bottle that exhaust up. That's toxic. So your body's the same way. You eat food and you got metabolic waste. You work out, you get some lactic acid, you got metabolic waste. You start thinking and studying, you're going to feel brain fatigue. That's metabolic waste. What do? You go to sleep so all that can drain, right? But if you're not sleeping properly, that doesn't happen. So people start to build up these toxins, and then they get sick, and then they get organ dysfunction. Then they go to the doctor. They wonder why I have heart issues. They wonder why they have liver toxicity, liver issues, kidney issues, and leg swelling. And it's like, your body's backed up. Your body's backed up. That's the simple thing. And then the current treatment for that is to give people a drug, give people essentially a Band-Aid. And again, I'm not anti-drug or anything.
I am.
If you get into
for the most part,
if you get into in a car accident or something, then you probably need some surgeries and drugs to keep you alive, right? And that's very important.
Certain times
to build your body's health, that's a different story. That's a completely different story. So that's where you got to fix the toxicity and build up the deficiency. So
definitely, and I think everyone knows the Cone Health Institute is one of my favorite clinics in the entire country, and I've been into a lot of them. Dr. Charlie, Dr. Cone, Dr. Christine, the list goes on and on. Dr. Calvin is those are the people that I've seen, in their clinic over the last decade or so. And his stuff is just unbelievable. You go out there, it's maintenance work. I don't wait till I get sick to go see Dr. Calvin. I'm feeling my body and understanding hey, my energy is just a little off today. Something's not right. Before I take a nosedive, I go in and get a system upgrade. And that's what his treatments are all about. And yes, he can fix some of the most challenging cases. But I think for everyone else, have that awareness. Go in there, start looking at your health. Understand, pick up books like this that share proper intakes and getting the stressors out of your life and what health and nutrition is all about. Obviously we dive more into exercise and performance in that book, but understanding this talks about nutrition and understanding baseline for health. And baselines for health, they're not drugs, they're not vaccines, they're not staying away from people. they're actually loving, touching, like having this interaction. Like that's what health's all about. And seeing people smile. One thing before we ended, one of my friends I was just talking to, he's an artist at the Sawdust Festival. It's like, they're making me wear a mask. I've been like written up 10 times. He said, at the end of the day, I don't feel that connection with the people because I don't see them smile. I don't get to see their facial expressions. The occupational therapists and the warfare, psychology warfare that's going on with just that alone is just devastating for people's energy and connections. And we really want to end that and really share what health really is. And I think that's the core of what this talk is for the timing of it. And I want to thank you, Dr. Calvin, for being such an amazing ambassador of what you do. He's so gifted, you guys. You have to go to Cone Health Institute, ask for Dr. Calvin. His treatments are phenomenal. Like, who does nerve work? Like, this guy works with the nervous system, and that's why I'm like so into it. They're doing muscle testing, which I've done forever. They do nerve treatments, quantum neurology. He's a quantum neurology doc. Like, these guys are like, they're doing these systems that are absolutely brilliant. They're tying in your entire nervous system, and your health is indicative of your central nervous system health. So that's why upregulating your nerve systems is so important. That's why it's an integral process of developing athleticism in an athlete to be an optimal performer. It's all about building those foundations. And our Go Beyond Summit is pulling in the best doctors to give you the resources to go out and experience this for yourself. So any final words before we cut out?
No, I think this was awesome. Thank you for having me on. Definitely, like I said, the 3 pillars of health: physical, biochemical, and emotional and mental stress. It's like, Justin covers it a lot in the book. You can learn a lot about nutrition, learn a lot about structural work and neurology and the nervous system. And then finally, for your everyday mental emotional stress, it's so good to just ground yourself. Just think about, how you feel going into nature. That's what these grounding bags are for. And, so I'm really grateful that, he's developed this type of technology for us to combat everyday stress in the world. And Athleticism, the book, really helps you upregulate your entire body, enhance your learning, expand your horizons with just, real life knowledge from the man who, walks the walk. And so I'm grateful.
Thank you. You're the man. Lots of love. Lots of love to you all. Thank you for joining us on our Go Beyond Summit. Take care.